Welcome to Ask the Divorce Whisperer, our Facebook Live event, where our goal is to demystify divorce. My name is Marta Papa, and I'm your host for this event. We have this event the first and third Friday of every month at 1 p.m. And we're live, and I interview different experts about divorce and sometimes their role in divorce, and ask them the following question. If you could give only one piece of advice to a good friend who's going through a divorce, what would that piece of advice be? So they answer, and then we continue to talk about what they went through in a divorce, or how they help people going through divorce, and we record this and play it later on YouTube. So if you like this session of Ask the Divorce Whisperer and you want to watch it later, you can do that on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and type in Ask the Divorce Whisperer, and you'll see a picture of the guest and their information, how to contact them if you'd like to. And you can even share it with somebody that you know that's going through a divorce. Perhaps it doesn't speak to you, but it might speak to them and be helpful to them. So feel free to do that. So thank you for joining us today. And it's just my pleasure to be interviewing Jeff Arthur. He is a business consultant and the creator and founder of The Values Conversation. I'll let him explain more once he's talking about the Values Conversation, but it's just fascinating what he has come up with to help businesses and help people be more congruent with their values and their purpose here. So I'd like to welcome Jeff. Can you say hi to our listeners and audience?
Hello to our listeners and audience. Great to be here.
And he's wearing a Kansas City Chiefs sweatshirt.
Absolutely. I thought I would dress up today.
There you go. Well, fair game, because the Super Bowl was yesterday.
Absolutely. Since we won the Super Bowl,
Chiefs won.
Absolutely. You gotta wear the Kansas City.
Yes. It's the perfect outfit for today. Perfect.
Absolutely.
Outfit. So I'm going to start with asking Jeff the question we ask everybody on this show, which is, if you had a friend going through a divorce or facing divorce, and you could only give them one piece of advice, and I know this is hard for Jeff to only give one piece of advice, what would that piece of advice be? So I'm going to turn it over to you, Jeff, to answer that question.
My piece of advice would be to never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, put the children in between you and your spouse, ex-spouse, person you're going through the difficulty with, because once that happens, nothing ever good comes from that.
So to make sure I understand what you're saying is, keep the children out of the middle of your divorce and even post-divorce. Keep the children out of it. And
whatever I went through divorce, my wife and I made the decision that we made two decisions, two things. Number one, we would never, ever, ever question the children, and putting them in the middle of whatever. What did mom do? What did dad do? What did whatever? And the second thing was, we would never ever fight in front of them. If we were going to have a problem or a disagreement or working through whatever, it was going to be something away from them, where they were never going to see that. They were never going to be involved in that. They were never going to get sucked into it. And
very smart.
That served us very well.
Very smart. All the literature says that is the damage to children during divorce is not moving to two different places, or one person moves out, or transporting back and forth. That is not what's dangerous to children is the conflict between mom and dad, which I often see as a divorce attorney and mediator. I often see that happening for 10 years after the divorce. And then people think,
Right.
well, we're already divorced, it's okay now. They know we don't like each other. No, it's not okay now, because it makes them pick who to stand by. They don't feel like they can be loyal to both of you. So
That's
they pick
exactly
one
right.
person, and that's the person they're going to be loyal to. And the other party, the other parent, unwillingly just kind of floats out of their life.
Right.
Because of the child's choice.
Yeah.
And we don't, that's the worst thing that can happen. The child grows up with only one parent and loses everything that the other parent brings to the table in parenting.
Yeah, you're 100% exactly right. Everything you're saying, anybody who's been through it knows that what you're saying is exactly right. Along with us not questioning the children, the other thing that we kind of added with that, or part of that, was that we were not going to speak badly about the other to the children. It was not going to, we were not going to villainize each other with the children, because this was something between us, didn't want it to be involving them. And we wanted them to love the other parent. We wanted them to have the relationship with the other parent, to a point that, raising the kids as we grew up, I was actually approached by one of my son's coaches as he was in high school, saying, I didn't know that you guys weren't married. You guys acted so nice with each other and you carry on. He said, somebody told me you guys were divorced. I didn't realize that. I didn't understand that.
Wow.
So I took that as a compliment that
Yes.
that we had figured out how to co-parent and exist around the kids and not cause a problem. But just throw this out there as people are listening to this going, my gosh, how did you do that? There were times where things were bad enough between her and I that whenever I would bring the kids home, she had a third party there where I could drop them off with. In other words, it was bad enough that if we saw each other, we were afraid we were going to start fighting. So we just eliminated the problem, and then, okay, I have to bring the kids home, but you don't have to be there where it's going to trigger me, or I'm not going to be there where it's going to trigger you. And we'll have a third party there, and they can receive the children, and then,
Wow.
they'll let you know that I dropped them off and you can come back home, or vice versa, whatever that was. But, we figured
That
out
is
what
a
we had to
true
do.
commitment to your children. That
Right,
is,
yeah, we had to
that
figure
is
out what we had to
amazing.
do to not fight in front of them. So
Not fight in front of them.
whatever you got to
had
figure
to
out.
do to not fight in front of them. That's sage advice, and that's what all the studies show. Don't fight in front of them. Wow.
Yeah, it causes so much damage. It causes so much problem. Not only, I think what you're saying is so important, but the other thing I think about is I've worked with people who were children growing up through that. They learn not to talk about what they're really thinking or feeling, because they don't want to say something that's going to trigger mom if they start talking about dad in a nice way. Or I really enjoyed whenever mom and I did whatever, well, that's going to upset dad, so I don't talk about it, and I don't tell you what I really think, or I don't tell you what I really feel. And then that develops as an adult, where it's like, oh, I don't share my thoughts, I don't share my feelings, I don't open up about whatever, and I can't figure out why I don't have any friends, or I don't know how to communicate, or on and on and on. It trains us to do all kinds of self-protective things that are not healthy for us.
Wow. Can you explain that a little more? In other words, some of the tactics or some of the practices that you used to not fight with your former spouse, that some of those you can internalize to the point as you're growing older. Some of those you can internalize to the point where it's not really healthy. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Children, and I mean, again, the audience, especially if you're the child of a divorce and now you're an adult, think back to whenever you were a kid and how a lot of times, especially if mom and dad are fighting and you're in the middle of it or they're asking you whatever, how you don't want to be there. So people will, it's about conflict resolution. And instead of it being healthy, it becomes, I just want to do whatever I have to do to get out of it. Now, does that mean I attack? Does that mean I shut down? Does that mean that I lie? Does that mean that I deflect? Does that mean that I, whatever that is? Well, whatever I figure out works whenever I'm a kid, I'm going to carry that with me into adulthood.
I understand now.
If I grew up in a household where people are yelling, and I marry somebody from a household where nobody ever spoke up, those are going to be, that's going to be a problem. But I'm going to carry on what I learned as a child. If I learn how to resolve conflict in a survival mode as a child, that's never going to work for me as an adult trying to resolve conflict in a healthy mode. Because what worked for me to survive is not going to work for me to be healthy.
I get it. I get it.
That's what I was trying to say.
And as kids, we do whatever we need to do to survive. But if you're not fighting, if you have rules like you and your former wife had, or still have probably, if you don't fight in front of them, then they aren't forced to come up with a way to resolve it in their head. They aren't forced to come up with, well, how do I resolve this conflict, or I don't know whose side to be on. They aren't even presented with that opportunity. Would that be fair to say?
I think that's exactly right. And I would also throw in with that, I guess, you asked me for one piece of advice, but I'm going to wind up giving you
it's all right.
Part A and
Got
B.
the first piece.
Every child, doesn't make any difference whether you're divorced or not. What I'm about to say is true across the board. Every child, if there's ever a problem with them and any person of influence, whether that's parent, whether that's teacher, whether that's aunt, uncle, grandparents, neighbor, whatever it is, if there's ever a problem, every child automatically assumes that it's their fault. I did something wrong. So depending on the age of the child, but any child for sure, but especially if they're younger, that child thinks they've done something wrong. If they maybe mom and dad will stay together if I clean my room more, or if I get better grades, or I didn't mean to be late. I didn't mean to not eat all my vegetables. It translates all kinds of ways depending on the age of the child. But if you help the child understand this is not their fault, they're not responsible. This isn't because you weren't good enough, because that's where a child goes. I didn't do it right. I wasn't good enough. This is my fault. Please don't do this. I'll resolve whatever I have to resolve. It's not about that. And the child doesn't understand that at all. So the more the parents confirm and reconfirm, and then reconfirm again, this is not about you. This is not your fault. This is not something that you've done right or wrong. This is about us. The more that's going to help the child as they grow older. It's very difficult for them to separate that.
And in your work with the values conversation, do you see any of this come to play? Can you describe a little more about the values conversation?
Sure. So the values conversation, we as a company are focused on doing one thing. We want to facilitate values-based growth and development. And that's what separates us from everybody else. Everything we do is about values-based. Everybody values certain things, whatever that is, whether that's honesty or appearance or punctuality or whatever that is, being trustworthy, etc. Everybody has certain values, and they affect every decision that we make across the board. Most of the time, though, nobody's ever sit down and thought about, well, now exactly what is it that I value most in this arena or this stuff or whatever. So what we do is we help people identify what it is they value, who they are from those values, and then what the direction they're trying to take on a personal, professional, relationship level, and how that plays into their life, and how that affects those decisions that are being made. Now, along the way with that, what happens is that we, a lot of times, not every time, obviously, but a lot of times we uncover some blind spots that people are carrying, which is why I'm talking about stuff with a divorce. Whenever I work with adults, we uncover some stuff that can be traced back to, oh my gosh, I started doing that, or I was doing that whenever this was happening with mom or dad or whatever it is. And we start breaking some of those habits that lead us into all kinds of insanity actions where we think it's going to be a different result doing the exact same over and over again. So we want to focus on the values. What is it that I value? What is it that I stand on? Who am I from those values? And what direction am I going with my life from that? So I did not ask you this before we started, Marta, and I apologize for putting you on the spot, but I feel you're comfortable with this. Can I share the results of your values conversation?
Sure.
So Marta, so you know who Marta is.
Oh no, I hope sure is okay.
Absolutely. So as we work through this, Marta identified that she values on a personal level self-acceptance, feeling secure, like a value of intimacy, connecting to people, and a sense of belonging. And on a business level, she values achievement. She wants to keep moving forward, prosperity, great teamwork, which she has with her office, and a level of recognition where she's connecting with people. And from those values, Marta identifies that she is a caring, problem-solving, mentoring, considerate, and passionate woman who wants to passionately change the world by creatively finding solutions to the difficult areas of life, which, as it turns out, she really focuses that on finding solutions in difficult situations and relationships. Whenever she mediates, whenever she's serving as attorney, she's finding solutions, putting the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle together to find put the picture together, find the solutions that others don't always really know how to do.
I gotta say that's accurate. That's really accurate. And when he asked me, it's a set of questions and choices. The values conversation, a set of questions and choices, and when it's a wonderful experience and it's fun. And when I answered those questions and Jeff came back with a summary of how I answered those questions.
Summary is a great word.
It really fits. I'm like, yeah, that's really right. That's true.
Absolutely, because they're your values. Once we identify your values and then identify how that affects you, it's who you are.
And sharing personally how that has affected me, knowing my values, how that has affected me personally and in what I do for a living. I would sum that up as saying it has helped me be congruent and understand why I tend to do X instead of Y, or why I get such satisfaction in helping people come to an agreement, whereas most attorneys say, oh my gosh, mediation, no way. You have both husband and wife in the same room without a policeman or a sheriff with a billy club?
Right.
I'm like, yeah, we really do.
Right.
They aren't even strapped to their chairs. You know, they really are in the same room. Like, I wouldn't touch that with the 10-foot pole. I don't go anywhere near the opponent without a sheriff, and they've gone through the metal detectors.
Right.
And there's a judge behind there making the decisions. How do you like doing that? And so there are tons of attorneys that wouldn't approach this kind of practice at all. And they're amazed that I do that. And I say, you know what? It floats my boat. It helps me understand, because I am about, I do value very much helping people resolve conflict. And
That's
I have to
exactly
say
right.
that comes from my background of childhood, where there was lots of conflict and no resolution. You know, one person decided, sort of like a judge decides, one person decided, and that was it. Everybody else, take your place. We were kind of like the Von Trapp family.
Right.
The dad would blow a whistle, and all 5 of us would
Right.
line up.
Right. Lines up. Right.
Smallest on the left, smallest on the right. We would line up, and my mother actually would blow a whistle in the neighborhood, and that meant that meant the McClintock kids come home.
Right. Right.
and line up. They used to call, my cousins used to call my mother the sergeant, the drill sergeant, because they said it looked like there was an army sergeant going up and down the line,
Right.
deciding if you were standing straight enough and tall enough, and if you were good enough, actually, if you were good enough. And I thought, well, that, of course, I never called her that, but that fits well. And so that's what I couldn't do as a kid. I couldn't resolve conflict, and that I'm positive now that that's what drove me to law school, because I thought, well, you know, our judicial system resolves conflict, so I want to learn how to do
Absolutely.
that. So I'm going to go to law school. Did I learn how to do that in law school? No.
Right.
No, I didn't learn to do that until I went to the Menninger Institute to study marriage and family therapy and child development for a master's, and that has served me more than I use that more on a daily basis than I do my law degree.
Absolutely.
I use that in court. I use that very
Absolutely.
effectively in court,
Absolutely.
because lawyers don't always know why they're doing something, and I do. I do, because I'm really clear about who I am and
That's
what my
right.
purpose is and why I'm here.
That's right. And something I would encourage your listeners to understand: anybody who goes through a divorce, we all understand it becomes all consuming. That that takes over everything and begins to define who I am.
Yeah.
So whether a person, you know, whether you're talking with a counselor or a coach or whoever, what I would encourage people to understand is that you want to know what your base is, what your values are. It's why I formed the company. Once you begin to understand what you stand on, then whatever is hitting you is going to affect you less, because you're grounded. You have a stronger foundation, which then leads to understanding what your purpose is. So again, using you as the example, Marta, you identified as a caring, problem-solving, mentoring, considerate, passionate woman with a purpose or a vision of passionately changing the world, because you want to creatively find solutions to difficult areas of life. So the reason I bring that up is because, again, we were talking about the Kansas City Chiefs and me wearing a sweatshirt and all that kind of stuff. So something, if I can tell you a real quick story that I'm assuming that some of your listeners heard themselves, but the quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles, a guy by the name of Jalen Hurts, was doing talking to the media, and he was asked a question about how he deals with the critics and how people, you know, whenever they say he can't do something or he shouldn't do something or he's not as good as whatever, and Hertz gave what I believe, how I've told people about it, it's the quote of quotes. It's like it's like the greatest quote I've ever heard. Hertz looked at him and said, "I had a purpose before they had an opinion."
Wow. Can I say that?
So
I had a purpose.
I had a purpose.
They had an opinion about me.
That's right. I had a purpose in my life. I had a purpose of what I was doing. I had a purpose of where I was going. I had a purpose of what I was trying to accomplish before they ever heard of me or had an opinion about how I wasn't good enough. And that only comes from whenever you know who you are.
Wow.
So whenever I understand what I stand on, what I value and who I am from those values, I'm then able to say, here's my purpose, or here's my direction, or here's what I'm doing. And that's why I think it's like, that may be one of, if it's not one of, it's the greatest quote ever, where it's just like, I had a direction and a purpose long before anybody else had an opinion about whether I could do it or not. So as people go through the divorce, first of all, everybody understands this too shall pass. It's going to get better sometime. But what can help me with that as I'm going through that process is realizing or recognizing who I really am, because I'm not, the summation of my life is not a failed relationship. The summation of my life is not going through a divorce or a mediation. The summation of my life is not I'm not reduced to that. But then the rest of the answer is, okay, well then who are you? Okay, well then what else is there in your life? The congruency you're talking about, Marta, it's not talking about money, or it's not talking about possessions. It's not talking about vehicles. It's talking about you as a person. That congruency, who am I as a human being? You've been able to say, well, I know I'm a caring, problem solving, mentoring, considerate, and passionate woman. That's who I am. That allows you to not go down so quickly whenever you get hit with whatever life throws at us. But it comes back to what Mr. Hertz said about, I had a purpose long before other people had an opinion.
Wow.
Which
I had a
is a
purpose.
phenomenal
I
quote.
had a purpose. How many people don't know their purpose?
I would say the vast majority of people do not know
Yeah.
that,
How do you do it? How do you go through life not knowing your purpose?
right.
And I got to say, I probably didn't know mine till until my 40s, 50s. I mean, I didn't know it as a
Not
kid.
uncommon,
I didn't.
right?
I took a certain path, but I didn't really know why I took that path. And ended up at a good place. But and I'm sure people come to grips with that purpose at different times in their life.
Well, absolutely. There's no question about it. But, as you and I have talking about it before, even whenever you didn't know what your purpose was consciously, it was still affecting you in ways of whenever, as a lawyer, areas that you would not practice law in. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to just be about this. I'm not going to just be a part of the cog in the wheel that's going to do whatever, that's going to be something that really doesn't affect anybody's life. I want to be making a difference. And you knew that even if you didn't, quote unquote, know it. And as whenever you and I started working together, we just brought that out. That's what the values conversation does. It brings to light that which is already in there to help people identify the congruency, which you've used, which is a perfect word, to recognize the congruency of what I stand on, who I am, and what I want to be doing with my life. And I'm not, in the cases whenever they meet you, I'm not just the sum total of a divorce. There's more to me, and I want to be more. I want to come out of this better than I was going into it. I don't just want to survive a divorce. I want to actually improve and build and become something more for myself, for my children, for my future, whatever that looks like.
Those are amazing words. Thank you very much. Those are amazing words that I think it can help people know that there is an end to that divorce. There is an end goal, and it's not the summary of their whole life. It's not their whole future. They can pick up the pieces and when they decide or are aware of what they want to do with the rest of their life. There's still time to do that. No matter how late in life you get divorced, there's still time to do that. You can redirect, but only if only if you've asked yourself the questions that you ask people. Only if can you do that. Otherwise, you're just kind of floundering between things and not understanding why you're making certain choices that don't go together.
That's exactly right. Everybody wants to grow. Everybody wants to be, more. I don't want to be staying in status quo, but what we try to do is make it values-based growth. We want it to be not just random, or not just something that I bring to you, Marta, and say, okay, here's what you need to do. I want it to be about what's already there. Let's bring that out so that it can be something you can really stand on, be passionate about, and really get behind. And help along the way. But as people are going through their divorces and going through the relationship struggles, the more they understand that you are there to help them solve the difficult areas of their life, the better they're going to allow you to serve them and represent them and do what you do best.
Wow, what a kind compliment. Thank you. Thank you. And what
You
hope
earned it.
you give, what hope you give to people who are getting divorced and they feel like everything's ending. And where are they? They're spiraling down. They don't have to. They don't have
Not
to.
at all.
There's light at the end of that tunnel. There's light
Not at all.
at the end of the tunnel.
Well, as we tell people, not to get too much in the weeds, but we try to tell people, whatever they're going through in their life, that they're more than their feelings. That how people feel about whether they feel overwhelmed or depressed or emotional or whatever. And right now in our society, we have been very, very, very incorrectly taught that our feelings are the most important thing. They're not. They're not that important at all. It's about decisions that lead us out of those feelings or around those feelings, and understanding that I'm so much more than my feelings. Well, I'm so much more than just this area of my life in my divorce. I'm so much more than this bad relationship or how things went wrong or that I trusted the wrong person, whatever that is. I'm more than that. But then the definition of that is, what does that more look like?
Yeah.
Let's define the more.
Find out what that is.
So that's not just about saying I don't want to do this, but understanding I want to do this and know what this is.
What a great way to end. People need direction, and you help them find that direction. And I can say personally that when I was consciously aware of that direction, it just fueled me even more. So thank you so much
Absolutely.
for sharing with us today, Jeff. I know we just only got to a piece of what you do, but I think that piece is extreme. It has an extremely impactful it's extremely impactful for people who are questioning everything in their life, like you do when you're getting divorced. So thank you so much for joining us and helping us see that we're more than just however we feel at the moment, and we can control that, and we can control our future. We can control our future.
Absolutely. I would, one final thing. People, as they're going through the divorce, whenever they work with you, Marta, they understand they're not going through it alone. It's so important for people to understand you're not alone in this.
Yeah.
There's people that can help you, whether it's a counselor, whether it's a coach, whether it's you, Marta, whether it's me, whatever it is. There are people that can help you through this. You're not all alone. You feel like it. Everybody does, but you're not.
Yeah. Very important thing to remember. Very important thing to remember.
There are great people like you, Marta. Great people like you, Marta, who can help in many, many ways. So well done.
Well done. Right back to you. Right back at you. Thank you so much, Jeff. And Jeff, if people want to get a hold of you, we're going to post some things on YouTube so that you can get a hold of him. But if you could think of a way right now to tell people to get a hold of you if they want to in the future, what would that be?
Absolutely. We're on LinkedIn. We're on YouTube as well. Just put in the values conversation. You're going to find us on LinkedIn. If you put in my name, Jeff Arthur, you'll be taken to the values conversation as well. Those are really two that are really, really good. But YouTube, the values conversation, LinkedIn, the values conversation of Jeff Arthur.
Great way to get a hold of Jeff if you want to hear more. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. And
my pleasure. Thank you for the honor of being here.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. So thank you to our listeners, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.